Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur to tell their story and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. As we have discussed previously on the show, on June 20th, 2022, the federal government announced the ban on the manufacture and import of single-use plastics. Bearing a few target exceptions, this will come into effect on December 2022. They did this without much thought on the cost and the impact on manufacturing industry in Canada, specifically the food industry in Canada. Joining us to discuss and highlight their incredible company and story and back for a return visit is Shalini Seth, Director of Operations at Surati Sweets. Surati is an amazing Indian baked good snack company which has nearly 200 employees worldwide, one of the most experienced leadership teams in the industry, and a portfolio of 400 products which continues to grow. In addition to their 65,000 square foot facility in Scarborough, Surati has 4 distribution centers across the United States, located in New Jersey, California, Texas, and Georgia. Surati continues their commitment to providing high-quality, authentic products and outstanding customer service, and you can find them in most major grocery chains. Welcome to the program, Shalini.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for having me. I appreciate being back.
So could you give us a quick overview of Surati and what you do? I think we have some pictures for you to review.
Great. So this is actually our retail store in Scarborough in Toronto. We also manufacture out of this facility. We primarily manufacture East Indian snacks, baked goods, sweets. We have a retail storefront here. We just recently launched a grain-free granola line, which is around the health food and things like that. So we are, changing with the times. And just trying to be as innovative as we possibly can as Canadian manufacturers.
Yeah, just amazing. And if you haven't had a chance to try their pistachio cookies, they are out of this world. They also have the best vegetarian spring rolls I've ever tasted. So get out and try some of their snacks. Shalini, our viewers are always interested in to hear how the company started. And I know you have an inspiring family story. Could you tell us a little bit about your company and its roots?
Absolutely. So Surati started 70 years ago in East Africa, in Uganda, Africa, by my grandfather and his brother. And through the Idi Amin expulsion, my father came to Canada as a refugee. And my grandfather slowly, followed. As a babysitter, primarily came in February out of all months to come to Canada and got bored and really wanted to go back to India at that point. And we actually had a family friend who reached out and realized that my grandfather was in Canada and remembered the products from Africa and asked if he could, help him make some just for some family parties. And, as I say, the rest is history. We've now been here 40 years. We slowly started from the kitchen in our home to a manufacturing facility now in Scarborough and employing 200 people out of this facility and growing and going to be starting a manufacturing in the US shortly. So it's one of those stories that does resonate with a lot of people because it really is what coming to Canada means for a lot of immigrants, new Canadians who have, had to come here, leaving their homes sometimes, and really giving them a chance to thrive in a new environment.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It's the Canadian dream. I love hearing that story. Shalini, many entrepreneurs have those minutes when they just didn't know if they're going to make it. We just have about a minute left. Did your company ever go through one of those times that you could share with us?
Absolutely. I think personally, just as navigating through the pandemic was challenging on every level, on personal levels, but also navigating the business. How do you keep it going? How do you keep your employees safe? But then losing 30% of our staff just with some of the programs that were out there and not necessarily having the same programs applied to business. So we were struggling not only to keep our demand and orders going, supply chain, and then PPE availability.
So I'm going to stop you because we have to go to break, but we'll be right back. You're watching Canadian Innovators. We're back. I'm talking with Director of Operations, Surati Sweets, Shalini Seth. So Shalini, before we went to break, you were talking about some of your challenges with dealing with the pandemic. Pick up your thought.
I think it was what every business was going through, like I said, on a personal level, but also just navigating the new systems and new measures that were out, social distancing, but then even availability of PPE was a big challenge, I think, across all aspects, from healthcare into manufacturing. So that, I think, has been the most challenging part of running the business in the last couple of years. And then just adding to it, I just feel like we haven't gotten a break where we can breathe and feel like do what we do best is run our business, grow the industry, become global competitors. And I just feel like we've just been going through challenge after challenge after challenge. And it's been unfortunate, but we're still here smiling and trying our best.
So when you talk about, the death by 1,000 cuts throwing new challenges at you, let's dive right into the plastics ban, which is coming out fast and furious. What does the plastics ban mean to your company?
So here's the best part about it is not only has the rollout been quick, the rollout has not been very informative at all. So there's a lot of gray area as to what is banned, what is not banned, what are we allowed to have, how much time do we actually have, where does this apply to? So not only are you trying to come up with a solution, you don't know what the real problem is to your organization. Now, for us, we have our manufacturing side, which deals with the prepackaged goods, like in terms of like something similar to our cookies, that come in plastic containers. We also have the retail side, which is similar to what restaurants are going to be facing. And a lot of them are independently owned, small companies who don't necessarily have the resources. So not only are you trying to find solutions, you actually really don't know what the problem is. And we can get a little more into details what it means for us, but that's, I think, the number one problem. The second part of it is sourcing. Like I said, coming out of the pandemic, we highlighted or we saw a lot of gaps in our supply chain, in our ability to manufacture in Canada. And when you are buying a lot of stuff from, India and China, that supply chain was virtually wiped out. And now trying to source, and we are still coming out of pandemic supply chain, I'm going to call it, where we are still facing those challenges. Now you are trying to source something new. Everyone's trying to source it. And all you're doing is making prices go up throughout the whole supply chain.
Yeah, and this at a time when people are just pummeled by inflation and high prices everywhere. Shalini, it doesn't seem like the federal government has taken into account the cost of retooling and the time that it takes to retool. What say you?
Exactly. And it's not just even a matter of retooling. When you look at the food industry, primarily, especially when you are what we would call our product shelf stable, right? So this is where your potato chips and stuff that you put out onto the market. There's a lot of scientific studies that go into shelf life study, which takes into consideration the product packaging, the raw materials that are going into it, the environment in around it. So that in itself takes long, unless you're going to expedite it, which is just more money to the manufacturer who has to conduct these studies. So it's not just a matter of retooling the product. It's actually possibly changing formulations and how we are actually going to manufacture and be able to still apply a 6-month, an 8-month, a 1-year shelf life to our product. So not only are you sourcing raw material, sourcing packaging material, you are now actually applying some shelf life study into this mix as well. So it creates a whole different challenge altogether. And like I said, these are for companies that maybe have the resources. I'll give you such a small example. We look at the plastic ban in a restaurant setting, right? So we have a retail store. We sell our some of our curries, which are oil based. We were selling them in foam containers that can be they stay warm, they don't leak, and they're at a good price point that it's a fast food item. Well, we are not allowed to use those anymore. And we've had to resource to get something that we can use, but we have to do leak test studies. Now, we have some resources that can do it on top of what we already do. How are other small businesses and independent businesses, the mom and pop shops, the husband and wife who, work 12 hours a day?
We are having a fascinating conversation. And I know that we've talked before and you've shared with me how tight margins are in the food services industry. So could you just explain to the viewer the challenges you face there?
Absolutely. As we've seen, not only are you trying to, being for the end consumer, so obviously you want to be able to keep prices low, but the margins in food manufacturing have always been low. And then when you look at competing on a global scale, so when you look at more and more products that are coming out of other nations, we have to be able to compete, not only going through having all these policies and having to eat a lot of these costs, because you can't always necessarily pass it on to the consumer, because at that point you price yourself out of the market. So, traditionally you have low margins to begin with, and now you are dealing with trying to compete on a global scale.
Yeah, and certainly you face challenges that people that are producing in other countries don't have to deal with. But I know, Shalini, you had a time when you were deciding whether you're going to expand here in Canada or expand operations in the United States. What did you decide and why?
Well, we actually made a tough decision, and we are going to be moving our growth to the U.S. It was something that we did a lot of research on, and it came down to surviving and being able to do a lot of the innovation that we wanted to do and grow, but be able to do it, as I said, at a price point that we can be in the market and be able to compete properly. Price is such a huge factor in a lot of this, and that's what it primarily came down to. It was being able to survive and thrive and grow, but be able to do it effectively. And we found the U.S. was a good environment for that. So part of our manufacturing will be moving to the U.S. in the fall.
So Shalini, in your opinion, you've lived through this. What is the biggest hindrance to growth for companies in manufacturing here in Canada?
It is exactly what we just talked about. It is policies that are being put in place without getting appropriate input from the key stakeholders, or the stakeholders that they are going to have. And not to be mean or rude or anything, but possibly have some agenda in it. And I feel that that's what's happening right now, that it really is the policies that we are being asked to abide by. Not to say that there shouldn't be accountability, not to say that as businesses, we don't have a responsibility to the environment, to our staff, to our employees, to the community, but we also have a business to run. And in order for us to be able to succeed, there is this notion that as we succeed, the business owners get a bigger profit, or they have a bigger house, or they buy a new car. That is definitely not the case when you look at a lot of the entrepreneurs. That growth or that success goes right back into the business so they can continue to thrive. Because at the end of the day, our employees thrive when we do. So I really think that's what's been that hindrance, is policies that are being put in place, and the onus is being put on business to figure it out.
Right, and there doesn't seem to be any understanding of what it is to run a business. There's no economics 101 from many of our politicians. I'm hearing from almost every manufacturing business that struggle with affordable energy. How is unaffordable energy impacting your business, Shalini? Because I know a baked goods company needs to have fuel.
Absolutely. And not only is it, like we already talked about, the margins being low, but as those costs get added and added, and especially in a manufacturing, we talk about off-peak hours or this. Well, when you start a line, when you have like continuous fry lines or continuous baking, startup for us is about 3 hours. And not only are you dealing with, getting through startup that you can, run in the middle of the night, you're also having a resource issue for people. So, it's one thing to say, well, why don't you just start a midnight shift, or why don't you do this? Or everyone just assumes that it is so simple. And like I said, I can talk about it, but when you talk to more and more businesses, and it doesn't matter how big or small that business is, we are all facing the same challenges. And anything that, takes out from that bottom line, affordable energy, with the fuel prices going up, like I said, everything has gone up. Inflation has gone in terms of inflation, but just even shipping our products across the border or shipping within Canada, we've had to come up with the money to do this. Yeah. And where do you find it?
It is insane what we have to face. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Canadian Innovators. Welcome back. Before we went to break, we were talking about the impact on Canadian competitiveness with federal government policies. But Shalini, I know that these policies also impact our employees. Could we talk a little bit about the impact on your employees?
Sure. So one of the things is job protection. And at the end of the day is ensuring that our people have a place to come to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it's making sure that we have the sales and the orders to support that. Now, one of the things that we found when you have a lot of certain policies that were written when CERB was introduced was you would have people off, rightly so, sometimes not. And what it would do is when you have a continuous line, if 3 people didn't show up, the line of 12 would get sent home. And because you aren't able to run effectively. So policies, affect the employee, but it also, like I said, when it takes away from our competitiveness and being able to do the orders, one of the things that we always hear about automation, yes, automation is very important, high skilled jobs. But one of the things you have to recognize is a lot of the new Canadians that are coming in, this will be their first job is in manufacturing to get into the, they're dealing with a lot coming into a new country. So this is their first job and we have to make it as seamless as possible. So to throw, English at them and start navigating new computer systems or robotics, sometimes they just want to pack on a line and be able to do it safely. So, it's one of those things where it's just, like I said, challenging, but on a personal note, my job is to protect my staff and make sure they have a place to come to.
Yeah, and certainly manufacturing gives people their first job and also helps them move up from starting on a line to having greater skills. This is the part of the program that's my favorite part, Shalini. I ask all my guests, if they were a politician, what 3 things would they do to grow jobs and the economy? Shalini, you're on the hot seat. What would you do?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Okay, what wouldn't I do? Okay. Number one, what I would do? I would actually listen to my constituents. And I don't mean from different groups that have, like that, I said, that agenda or that motive. It would really be listen to the people who are living and look to write policies that will help them. The second thing I would do is I would run it like a business. We have our good days and we have our bad days, but we are able to flex to be able to do it. And so we can continue to succeed. If I was in government, I would apply the same thought process. You can't be, one size fits all. You can't be, we're going this way and it doesn't matter what's happening around the world. We're going to continue this way. You have to change. You have to change with the times. And the third thing I would do is, at the end of the day, try to make a profit. You can't continue to run on a deficit and you can't continue to assume that it'll be made up later on. At the end of the day, policies, we make business decisions because we can't run on deficit. The government needs to start applying the same rule.
Yeah, and certainly we need a strategy to keep manufacturing and keep manufacturing jobs, many of them high paying in Canada, and we haven't seen that. We need to have a government that listens and works with us to make sure that we have job growth and jobs for our kids in the economy. So, Shalini, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. Tell us about your amazing story. It is an inspiration. And keep doing what you're doing because your products are amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Jocelyn.
And we'll have to have you back next time to really look at your line and see how you make the product and what you do there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to my guest, Director of Operations, Surati Sweets, Shalini Seth. Canadian manufacturer is the second largest GDP contributor and a major employer of high-paid middle-class jobs. Federal government policy is truly death by 1,000 cuts. These policies drive out manufacturers as they are forced to move to other jurisdictions in search of affordable energy and policies that allow for job growth. The Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses of Canada has been calling for years for a national strategy on both the manufacturing and the resource sector. Is anyone listening? I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators, and we'll see you next time.